The Galactic Academy classified humans as harmless because they tested strength, speed, and weapons, but they never tested the one trait that once made humans hunt predators to extinction. I have been working at the Galactic Academy of Species classification for 73 cycles now, and I thought I had seen every flavor of bureaucratic incompetence the universe had to offer. Turns out I was wrong. Catastrophically, hilariously, pants-wettingly wrong. The ceremony hall gleamed with that particular shade of pretentious that only government buildings can achieve. You know the type. Too much marble, not enough common sense. The great certification ceremony was in full swing, and Administrator Quilvin stood at the podium looking like he had just discovered the secret to eternal wisdom, when really he had just discovered how to make his head tendrils look fuller for the cameras. And now, Quilvin announced, his voice dripping with self-satisfaction that could probably be bottled and sold as a sedative, we present the certification for Species Classification Code 7739. Origin Planet Earth. Common designation humans. The human in question, one Jack Reeves, stood on the platform looking about as threatening as a half-deflated balloon. Average height for his species, which meant he was shorter than most of us. Lean build. No visible natural weapons, no armor plating. No venomous glands. No psychic abilities, nothing. The guy looked like evolution had built him from spare parts and forgotten to add the dangerous bits. Quilvin continued his speech, reading from the official assessment data pad with the kind of confidence that makes you want to slap someone. After extensive testing, psychological evaluation, physical assessment, and cultural analysis, the Academy has determined that humans fall into Category 5, non-threatening, suitable for general interaction, commercial partnership, and unrestricted travel throughout Galactic Council space. Category 5. Non-threatening. Let me explain something about our classification system, because this becomes important later when everything goes sideways. The Galactic Academy uses a 7-tier threat assessment scale. Category 1 is reserved for species like the Rexian hive, who could probably crack a planet in half if they skipped breakfast and woke up cranky. Category 7 is for species like the Fluffarian cloud floaters, who literally cannot conceive of violence because their language does not have words for conflict. Category 5 means harmless, friendly, about as dangerous as a strongly worded letter. The other Academy officials nodded along, their various appendages bobbing in agreement. Director Helmath, whose species prided itself on never making mistakes, which is hilarious considering their mistake rate, actually applauded. An exemplary assessment. Quilvin. The human species shows remarkable cooperation, minimal aggression markers, and a delightful tendency toward negotiation over confrontation. I watched Jack Reeves accept his certification plaque with a polite smile. He thanked Quilvin. He shook appendages with the officials. He posed for the ceremonial photographs. He was so unremarkably pleasant that I almost felt bad for him. What I did not feel bad about was the spectacular disaster waiting to happen, because I had read the fine print in the assessment reports. You know, the parts that bureaucrats skip because reading is hard and thinking is harder. The parts that mentioned things like endurance capabilities, stress response patterns, and historical records of something called persistence hunting, whatever that meant. But no, Quilvin and his band of certified geniuses had looked at the humans, seen their lack of claws and fangs, and decided they knew everything. They had administered their standard tests: reaction time, average, strength relative to body mass, unremarkable, venom production, 0, energy projection abilities, none detected, case closed, species classified, time to congratulate ourselves and move on to lunch. Jack Reeves stood there with his Category 5 certification, and I swear there was something in his eyes. Not malice, not aggression, just this weird little glint that suggested he found the whole thing amusing, like he knew something we did not. But hey, what could possibly go wrong? The Galactic Academy had spoken. Their assessment methods had been refined over 10,000 years. They had classified over 900 species without incident, not counting the incident with the Glorpians. But we do not talk about that. Quilvin raised his ceremonial cup, the one reserved for special occasions and maximum pomposity, to another successful classification, to the continued safety and prosperity of the Galactic Council, and to the humans who will make excellent trading partners and pose absolutely no threat to anyone. Everyone drank. Everyone cheered. Everyone felt very proud of themselves. And Jack Reeves? He just smiled that polite little smile and said something that should have been a warning but sounded like gratitude. Thank you for the warm welcome. I look forward to showing you what humans can really do. Quilvin beamed. Helmath nodded approvingly. The other officials murmured their pleasure at such a cooperative attitude. I just sipped my ceremonial beverage and thought, oh, this is going to be good, because here is the thing about bureaucrats. They are fantastic at following procedures, filling out forms, and covering their own posteriors when things go wrong. What they are not fantastic at is thinking beyond their checklists. They had tested Jack Reeves according to protocol. They had measured all the right things. They had checked all the boxes. They just had not asked the right questions. Like, for instance, why a species with no natural weapons had managed to become the dominant life form on a planet filled with things that had lots of natural weapons, or why their psychological profiles showed unusual persistence in the face of impossible odds, or what it meant that their stress response apparently involved getting more focused instead of shutting down. Minor details. Completely unimportant. Nothing to worry about at all. The ceremony concluded with more speeches, more congratulations, and more self-satisfied smiling. Jack Reeves filed out with the other newly certified species representatives. His Category 5 designation officially entered into the galactic database. Non-threatening, the file said. Harmless, it confirmed. No special precautions necessary, it concluded. I watched him go and made a mental note to update my personal insurance policy. Call it a hunch, call it paranoia, call it 73 cycles of watching bureaucrats be spectacularly wrong about absolutely everything. Whatever you want to call it, I was about to be proven right in the most entertaining way possible. Now here is where things get interesting, and by interesting I mean the kind of interesting that makes you want to grab popcorn and a front row seat to watch a disaster unfold in real time. The Grand Combat Arena sits adjacent to the Academy, because apparently someone decided that ceremonial certification was not enough. No, we also needed an optional, completely voluntary proving ground where newly classified species could demonstrate their combat capability, you know, for cultural exchange purposes, and bragging rights. Mostly bragging rights. Vorthan Krell, the arena master, stood at the entrance looking like someone had sculpted arrogance out of muscle and bad decisions. He was Crenarian, which meant he stood roughly 8 feet tall, had 4 arms, and possessed enough natural armor plating to stop a plasma rifle. His species had held the arena championship for the last 15 cycles, and Vorthan had never let anyone forget it for even a microsecond. Welcome. Welcome, Vorthan boomed, his voice carrying across the courtyard where the certification ceremony attendees were mingling. The arena stands open for any newly certified species who wish to test themselves in honorable combat. A tradition spanning millennia, a chance to prove your worth beyond mere paperwork. He flexed all 4 arms, simultaneously, which was objectively impressive and subjectively obnoxious. Most species representatives politely declined. The Fluffarian cloud floater literally could not enter the arena because gravity was involved. The Matherian crystalline entity expressed interest but was physically incapable of violence due to their silicon-based structure. Smart choices all around. Then Jack Reeves raised his hand. I would like to participate, he said in that same pleasant, cooperative tone he had used throughout the ceremony. The courtyard went quiet. Then someone laughed. Then everyone laughed. It was the kind of laughter that starts nervous and builds into genuine amusement, because surely this was a joke. Vorthan's face, all 6 eyes of it, lit up with delight. The human wishes to enter the arena. The Category 5 non-threatening human. If that is allowed, Jack replied, still smiling. Oh, it is allowed. It is absolutely, completely allowed. Vorthan could barely contain his glee. This was going to be the entertainment highlight of his year. The arena welcomes all challengers regardless of classification or common sense. I watched the betting boards light up faster than a supernova. The odds against Jack Reeves were astronomical. Literally astronomical. I am talking numbers that required scientific notation to display properly. Quilvin, still riding high on his certification success, actually patted Jack on the shoulder. Admirable spirit, young human. Truly admirable. Though perhaps you might want to reconsider. The arena can be quite intense for Category 5 species. I appreciate the concern, Jack said. But I think it will be fun. Fun. He said fun. Like he was going to a recreational facility instead of a combat arena where species with natural weapons, armor plating and evolutionary advantages measured in the millions of years came to prove dominance. Hilmath leaned over to Quilvin and whispered loud enough for half the courtyard to hear. Should we stop him? This could be embarrassing for the human species. Let him try, Quilvin whispered back somehow even louder. It builds character. Besides, the arena has safety protocols. He will be fine. Humiliated. Perhaps, but fine. The other officials nodded sagely. As if they had not just cleared this species as harmless 30 minutes ago. As if sending a harmless species into a combat arena made perfect sense. As if their entire assessment process was not about to be stress tested by one volunteer with either tremendous courage or tremendous stupidity. I checked the betting boards again. The odds had gotten worse. Someone had put down credits betting Jack would not last 15 seconds. Another bet said he would forfeit before the match even started. The most optimistic bet, placed by someone who was clearly drunk or brain damaged, gave him 2 minutes maximum. Thornton cracked his knuckles, all 16 of them producing a sound like a percussion symphony. Excellent. We shall begin in 1 standard hour. This will be glorious. He said glorious. What he meant was hilarious. What he expected was a quick demonstration of why the Academy's classification system worked, why Category 5 species stayed in Category 5, and why volunteering for combat when you had no natural advantages was a terrible idea. Jack Reeves just nodded, stretched his arms a bit, and asked if there was somewhere he could get water.
Water?
The guy was about to walk into an arena against species that evolution had specifically designed for combat, and he was worried about hydration. The crowd dispersed, chattering excitedly about the upcoming entertainment. Credits changed hands as more bets were placed. Quilvin and the other officials headed to the viewing boxes, already composing the sympathetic speech they would give after Jack's inevitable immediate defeat. Thornton strutted toward the arena preparation chambers, probably practicing his victory poses, and Jack Reeves. He found a water station, drank 2 full containers, did some light stretching that looked completely inadequate, and walked calmly toward the arena entrance like he was going for an afternoon stroll. I updated my insurance policy, moved closer to the viewing area, and settled in, because either I was about to witness the shortest arena match in history, or the Galactic Academy was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between looking harmless and being harmless. My credits were on the expensive lesson. The arena floor was standard configuration, 60 meters diameter, reinforced composite surface, environmental shields to prevent spectator casualties, and medical teams on standby. You know, the usual setup for when things go wrong, which they frequently did. Thornton stood in the center, all 4 arms raised for dramatic effect. For our challenger's first match, we have selected 3 opponents from our beginner training program. This is standard protocol for Category 5 species. 3 opponents shuffled onto the arena floor, and I had to hand it to Thornton. He had picked the absolute bottom of the barrel. There was a young Skelthian, barely past adolescence, with 2 functional arms and mandibles that had not finished hardening. Next came a Plorathian whose species was known more for accounting skills than combat prowess. And finally a Ventraxian who looked like someone had assembled a warrior out of spare parts and forgotten to include the instruction manual. Beginner level was being generous, charitable even. These 3 could not fight their way out of a shipping container if someone left the door open and provided directions. The crowd in the viewing galleries was packed. Word had spread fast. Everyone wanted to see the non-threatening human get a gentle educational beating. Quilvin sat in the prime viewing box, looking pleased with himself. Helmath had brought snacks. Jack entered the arena wearing simple clothing. No armor, no weapons, no protective gear of any kind. He had rolled up his sleeves, which seemed insane considering what was about to happen, or what everyone thought was about to happen. Begin, Thornton announced, and immediately retreated to the edge of the arena, anticipating a quick conclusion. The 3 opponents spread out, trying to remember their training. The Skelthian circled left, the Plorathian circled right. The Ventraxian stood in the middle, looking confused about the whole situation. Jack did not move. He just stood there watching all 3, his head turning slightly to track their positions. Not panicking, not charging, just watching. The Skelthian struck first, lunging forward with a textbook attack pattern that every first-year trainee learned. Predictable, telegraphed, safe. Jack stepped sideways, not dramatically, not with a combat roll or flourish. He just stepped. The Skelthian sailed past, momentum carrying him forward, mandibles snapping on empty air. The crowd chuckled. Lucky dodge, they figured. The Plorathian came next, attempting a grappling maneuver that required, actually catching the opponent. Jack ducked under the reaching arms, twisted, and somehow ended up behind the Plorathian. Then he pushed. Not a strike, not a hit, just a simple push at exactly the right moment. The Plorathian stumbled directly into the Ventraxian. Both went down in a tangle of confused limbs. The chuckling stopped. That was not luck. That was timing. The Skelthian recovered and charged again, this time with both arms extended. Jack did something I had never seen in arena combat before. He ran toward the Skelthian, which seemed suicidal, then dropped and slid across the smooth arena floor like he was hydroplaning. The Skelthian's arms passed over him, grabbing nothing, and Jack's feet caught the Skelthian's legs mid-slide. Down went opponent number 1. Hard. What just happened? Someone in the crowd asked. He is toying with them, another voice responded, uncertain. The Plorathian and Ventraxian untangled themselves and attacked together, which showed more coordination than either had demonstrated during training. Jack backpedaled, letting them advance, his eyes constantly moving between both opponents and the recovering Skelthian behind him. Here is what I noticed, what everyone was starting to notice. Jack was not faster than his opponents. He was not stronger. He had no reach advantage. What he had was timing, positioning, an almost disturbing ability to be exactly where attacks were not. The Ventraxian swung a wild punch. Jack leaned back just enough for the fist to pass harmlessly by. The Plorathian tried a leg sweep. Jack hopped over it, landed, and used the Plorathian's extended leg as a springboard to vault away from the Skelthian's renewed assault. 3 opponents, 0 hits landed, and Jack was not even breathing hard. In the viewing box, Quilvin's self-satisfied expression had developed cracks. His physical assessment showed average reaction time. Perhaps the equipment malfunctioned, Helmath suggested, setting down his snacks. Down on the arena floor, the 3 opponents were starting to look tired. Not injured, not defeated, just tired from constantly missing. The Skelthian charged again, putting everything into a full-force tackle. Jack sidestepped, grabbed one of the Skelthian's arms as it passed, and used the creature's own momentum to redirect him straight into the arena wall. Not hard enough to cause injury, but hard enough to make a point. The crowd had gone from laughter to confused murmuring. This was not how Category 5 species behaved. They either fled, surrendered immediately, or got pummeled within seconds. They did not systematically dismantle 3 opponents through nothing but movement and timing. The Plorathian, breathing heavily now, made one last desperate attempt at a grab. Jack caught both incoming arms, stepped to the side, and performed what I can only describe as a controlled rotation. The Plorathian spun like a top and collapsed, dizzy and disoriented. The Ventraxian, seeing both companions down or dazed, did the smart thing and raised his arms in surrender. Total match time, 4 minutes, 18 seconds. Total hits Jack received, 0. Total damage Jack inflicted, technically none. He had just made 3 opponents defeat themselves through exhaustion and poor positioning. Vorthan stood at the arena edge, all 6 eyes wide. That was unexpected. Quilvin activated the communicator to the arena floor. Perhaps we should conclude the demonstration here. You have made an excellent showing, Representative Reeves. Jack looked up at the viewing boxes, still not even breathing hard. Is there more? I was told this was a combat assessment. The betting boards went haywire. Odds shifted dramatically. Credits flowed in new directions. Someone in the crowd shouted that they wanted to change their bet, which was against regulations, but considering what we had just witnessed, regulations seemed less important than acknowledging reality. More? Vorthan repeated, his voice uncertain for the first time since I had known him. You wish to continue? Sure, Jack said, with that same pleasant smile. I came all this way. Might as well make it worth the trip. Helmath leaned over to Quilvin. Did we test for delusional overconfidence? That is supposed to show up in psychological profiles. Quilvin did not answer. He was too busy frantically scrolling through Jack's assessment files, looking for the section he should have read more carefully the first time. I checked my insurance policy one more time, confirmed my coverage was adequate, and settled deeper into my seat. The warm-up was over. Now things were about to get really interesting. Vorthan consulted with the other arena officials, their conversation animated and increasingly frantic. I could see them gesturing at datapads, pointing at Jack, and generally exhibiting the body language of people realizing they had made a significant miscalculation. Finally, Vorthan returned to the arena center, his composure restored but his confidence noticeably reduced. Very well, Representative Reeves, for your second match, we will escalate to intermediate-level competition. Actually, a voice boomed from the arena's competitor entrance. I will handle this personally. Oh no. Oh yes. Oh, this was going to be spectacular. Thorax the Undefeated stepped onto the arena floor, and the crowd erupted. This was not just any intermediate competitor. This was the reigning arena champion for the last 8 cycles. Thorax was Crenarian, like Vorthan, but where Vorthan was arrogant and showy, Thorax was a walking nightmare built from slabs of armored muscle and bad intentions. Let me paint you a picture. Thorax stood 9 feet tall, 4 arms, each capable of crushing steel. Natural armor plating that had turned aside energy weapons during his military service. Regenerative capabilities that let him recover from wounds that would kill most species. His combat record included 263 arena victories, 47 championship defenses and 0 defeats. 0. As in none. As in undefeated was not just a nickname, it was a factual statement. The crowd chanted his name. Thorax. 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 Jack looked up at the champion, tilted his head slightly, and his expression remained exactly the same. Pleasant. Calm. Maybe slightly curious. In the viewing boxes, Quilvin had gone pale, which for his species involved a color shift toward ultraviolet. This is not protocol. Champions do not fight Category 5 species. Someone stop this. Stop it, how? Hellmouth asked, his snacks forgotten. Thorax volunteered. Arena rules permit any registered competitor to issue challenge, and the human accepted. The human does not understand what he accepted, Quilvin protested. Down in the arena, Thorax performed his traditional pre-match ritual, which involved flexing all 4 arms, roaring at the ceiling, and punching the ground hard enough to crack the reinforced composite. Intimidation tactics, standard procedure, extremely effective against most opponents. Jack used the time to drink more water. Your assessment files, Thorax rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. List you as non-threatening, Category 5. Harmless. That does seem to be the official determination, Jack agreed. I will demonstrate why these classifications exist. Thorax continued. Nothing personal, simply educational. I appreciate the lesson, Jack said. He sounded genuine. That made it worse somehow. The betting boards had stopped accepting wagers. Too much volatility. Too many people trying to change their positions. The odds against Jack had improved slightly after the warm-up match, but were still catastrophically bad. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gave him a chance against Thorax, except maybe Jack himself, who seemed utterly unbothered by the 9-foot wall of armored death standing across from him. Begin, Thor then announced, and immediately retreated much further back than he had for the first match. Thorax did not circle, did not probe, did not test. He simply charged, all 4 arms extended, moving with speed that should have been impossible for something his size. Jack ran, not away, perpendicular. He sprinted toward the arena wall like he had completely lost his mind. Thorax adjusted course, following, closing the distance with shocking speed. The gap narrowed. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. Jack hit the wall and did something that made the entire crowd gasp. He ran up it. Literally ran up the vertical surface for 3 full steps before gravity remembered it existed, and he launched himself backward, sailing over Thorax's head. The champion skidded to a stop, turned, and found Jack landing in a roll 20 meters away. What in the 7 systems was that? Someone shouted from the crowd. Did he just run on a wall? Another voice asked. Check the gravity settings. A third demanded. That should not be possible. Gravity settings were normal. Jack had just used momentum and leg strength to briefly defy physics in a way that was technically possible but practically insane. Thorax charged again. This time Jack did not run. He grabbed one of the training equipment pieces stacked at the arena edge, a practice shield designed for defensive drills, and threw it, not at Thorax, at Thorax's feet. The shield skidded across the smooth floor. Thorax stepped on it. His armored foot found no traction. He went down like a collapsing building, all 9 feet and probably half a ton of him, hitting the arena floor with a crash that vibrated through the viewing galleries. The crowd went silent. Thorax the undefeated had just been grounded by a piece of training equipment in basic physics. Non-threatening, someone in the crowd said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Absolutely harmless. Laughter rippled through the galleries. Nervous laughter, but laughter nonetheless. In the viewing box, Quilvin was frantically swiping through files. Where is the section on improvisational tactics? Where is the assessment of environmental exploitation? Did anyone test for creative problem solving under pressure? That is not standard in the Category 5 evaluation protocol. Elmath admitted. Category 5 species typically do not demonstrate advanced tactical thinking. Well, this one does. Quilvin snapped. Thorax rose. Slower now. More cautious. His pride was damaged. His armor was fine, but his pride had taken a serious hit. He circled Jack, all 4 arms ready, looking for an opening that did not involve running headlong into another humiliating trap. Jack circled too, maintaining distance, his eyes tracking every movement. He was studying Thorax, learning patterns, processing information. Thorax feinted left. then struck right with 2 arms while the other 2 swept low. A combination attack that had won him 17 championship matches, impossible to dodge. Unavoidable. Jack went down, dropping flat to the arena floor, letting all 4 arms pass through the space his body had occupied a microsecond earlier. Then he rolled between Thorax's legs, came up behind him and did something absolutely unhinged. He jumped onto Thorax's back, not to attack, not to strike. He just climbed on and held on. Arms wrapped around the champion's neck, legs locked around his armored torso. Thorax spun, trying to dislodge him. Jack held on. Thorax reached back with all 4 arms. Jack shifted position, staying just out of reach. Thorax slammed his back into the arena wall. Jack absorbed the impact and maintained his grip. Get him off, Thorax roared. Get this parasite off. Parasite. The reigning champion had just called a Category 5 species a parasite. The irony was delicious. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Thorax was still trying to dislodge Jack. Jack was still holding on. What had started as a combat match had devolved into the most absurd endurance test I had ever witnessed, and I had witnessed a lot of absurd things working for the Galactic Academy. Thorax slammed himself into the wall again. Jack grimaced but held on. Thorax spun in circles, trying to generate enough centrifugal force to throw the human off. Jack adjusted his grip and stayed attached like some kind of determined barnacle. Here is where things got interesting. And I mean interesting in the way that makes you question everything you thought you knew about biological limitations. Thorax was breathing hard. Not just heavy breathing, labored breathing. His movements were slowing. His forearms reached back with less speed, less precision. The arena champion, the undefeated warrior with 263 victories, was getting tired. Jack looked focused, strained, sure, but not exhausted, not failing. He was just holding on, maintaining his position, breathing steadily through his nose like he could do this all day. What is happening? Quilvin demanded, standing up in the viewing box. Carnarians have superior cardiovascular systems. Thorax should be able to maintain this activity level for at least 2 standard hours. Perhaps the human is lighter than expected. Helmuth suggested weakly. Reduced burden on Thorax's system. He is not that light, I muttered, watching the arena floor with growing fascination. 20 minutes. Thorax dropped to one knee, still trying to reach Jack, still failing. His breathing was ragged now, desperate. His armor plating was overheating from the exertion, steam rising from the cooling vents in his carapace. Jack maintained his grip, his breathing still controlled, still steady. Sweat poured down his face, sure, but his eyes were alert, focused, patient. That is when it clicked, not just for me, for everyone watching. We were witnessing something that the Academy's assessment protocols had completely missed because they had never thought to test for it. Humans do not stop. I pulled up Earth's biological data on my personal data pad, reading through sections that the Academy had classified as irrelevant trivia. There, buried in the evolutionary history files, was a section on something called persistence hunting, a hunting method where humans simply chased prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They did not need to be faster. They did not need to be stronger. They just needed to keep going, keep pursuing, keep running, for hours, sometimes for days. Their prey would overheat, collapse and die while the human just kept moving forward. Oh no, I whispered. What? The person next to me asked. We did not classify a predator species. We classified an endurance predator species. 30 minutes. Thorax was on both knees now, all 4 arms braced against the arena floor, trying to support his own weight. Jack had finally released his grip and stepped back, giving the champion space, not out of mercy, out of practicality. Thorax was no longer a threat. The crowd had gone completely silent. No cheering, no chanting, just stunned, horrified silence as they watched their undefeated champion reduced to a gasping, overheated wreck by a Category 5 species who had done nothing except hold on and wait. Vorthan activated the emergency communication channel. Medical team to the arena floor. Competitor assistance required. Which competitor? The medical coordinator asked. Thorax, Vorthan said quietly. The viewing galleries erupted, nodding cheers. In confusion, disbelief, and rapidly spreading panic, species representatives from dozens of worlds were suddenly pulling up human biological data, reading the same files I was reading, coming to the same terrifying conclusion. Quilvin had abandoned all pretense of composure. He was frantically messaging someone, probably his supervisor, probably with a resignation letter attached. Helmuth had knocked over his snacks and did not even notice. Emergency protocol review. Vorthing announced over the arena communication system. All matches suspended pending classification verification. Bit late for that, Jack said, his voice carrying across the silent arena. He was breathing harder now, finally showing exertion, but he was still standing, still functional, still ready to continue if needed. The medical team rushed onto the floor, attending to thorax, providing cooling treatments and oxygen supplementation. The champion waved them off weakly, too proud to accept help but too exhausted to refuse effectively. In the crowd, debates erupted. Some species were horrified, calling for immediate reclassification. Others were fascinated, analyzing the tactical implications. A few were placing new bets on future human combat assessments, assuming there would be future assessments after the inevitable diplomatic incident this was going to cause. I watched Jack walk to the water station, drink 3 full containers and sit down on the arena floor to rest. Not collapse. Not surrender. Just rest. Like he had finished a moderate workout instead of defeating the reigning arena champion through nothing but refusing to quit. Non-threatening, someone in the crowd said again, but this time there was no sarcasm. Just fear. Just the dawning realization that the label had never been about capability. It had been about temperament. And temperament could change. Thorax finally accepted the medical team's help, allowing them to assist him off the arena floor. As he passed Jack, he stopped, looked down at the human who had ended his undefeated streak, and spoke. "What are you?" Jack looked up, smiled that same pleasant smile and answered, "Category 5. Non-threatening. Just like the certification says." The medical team hurried Thorax away before he could respond, probably for the best. Vorthen stood at the arena edge, all 6 eyes fixed on Jack, his 4 arms hanging loose at his sides. He looked like someone who had just watched their entire understanding of combat theory collapse into rubble. "Is there a 3rd round?" Jack asked, standing up and stretching. "Or should I come back tomorrow?" Nobody answered. Nobody knew how to answer. The arena master, the academy officials, the crowd. All of us just stood there trying to process what we had witnessed. Humans do not stop. That was the lesson. That was the horror. That was the thing the Galactic Academy had completely catastrophically missed. Vorthen, to his credit, recovered faster than most. He cleared his throat. All 4 arms crossed over his chest in what I recognized as the Crenarian gesture for profound confusion mixed with respect. "The match is concluded. Victor Jack Reeves, representative of Earth." The announcement echoed through the arena. Official, final, impossible to deny. Jack waved to the crowd, which responded with scattered, uncertain applause. Nobody knew what the appropriate response was. Do you cheer for the underdog? Do you mourn the fallen champion? Do you panic about the strategic implications? All 3 seemed equally valid. The arena officials convened in a tight cluster near the exit, their conversation animated and increasingly loud. I could hear fragments, words like reclassification, emergency session, diplomatic incident, and my personal favorite, career-ending disaster. Quilvin descended from the viewing box at speed, his head tendrils quivering with what I assumed was barely contained panic. He approached Jack, who was still cooling down, and attempted to maintain professional composure. "Representative Reeves," Quilvin began, his voice tight. "That was quite the demonstration. The Academy will need to conduct follow-up assessments, additional testing, comprehensive evaluation of everything, really." "Sure," Jack said agreeably, "though I should mention, I am not really a combat specialist or anything, just a botanist." The conversations around us stopped. Everyone within earshot turned to stare. "Botanist?" Hilmath repeated, appearing beside Quilvin. "You study plants?" "Xenobotany. Specifically, I am here on behalf of Earth's Agricultural Research Division to discuss potential crop exchanges." Jack stretched his shoulders, working out tension. The arena thing was just for fun. Cultural experience. You know, for fun. He had dismantled 3 opponents and exhausted the reigning champion for fun. As a botanist. As a civilian researcher with no combat training. "No combat training?" Quilvin asked weakly, as if hearing my thoughts. "Well, I did some recreational martial arts back home. Jogging. Basic fitness. Nothing serious." Jack paused, considering, though I guess the persistence running helped. "I do a lot of field work tracking plant specimens across rough terrain. Builds endurance. Recreational. Basic fitness." The words hung in the air like an indictment of every assumption the Galactic Academy had made. Helmath pulled up his datapad with shaking appendages. "If you are a civilian botanist with recreational training, what would a combat-trained human be capable of?" Jack thought about it. "Oh, you mean like military personnel? Special forces? Professional athletes? Yeah, they would probably do better than me. They actually train for this stuff. The color drained from Quilven's face, shifting through the entire visible spectrum and into wavelengths I could not perceive. Helmath dropped his datapad. Forthen, still within earshot, made a sound like grinding metal. Better, Quilven repeated. Better than defeating Thorax the Undefeated. Better than demonstrating endurance capabilities that exceed our heavy combat species. Better than tactical improvisation that bypassed 8 cycles of arena experience. I mean, probably. Jack said. They are professionals. I just study plants. Somewhere in the viewing galleries, someone started laughing. Hysterical, unhinged laughter. Others joined. Not because it was funny, because the alternative was screaming. The implications cascaded through the assembled species representatives like a shockwave. If a botanist could do this, what could their soldiers do? Their special operations teams? Their champion athletes? What had the Galactic Council just invited into their space with unrestricted travel clearance? Quilven turned to his fellow Academy officials. Emergency reclassification hearing. Immediately, contact the Council. Suspend all human travel authorizations pending review. On what grounds? One official asked. He followed all rules, participated legally, defeated opponents fairly, on the grounds that our entire assessment methodology is apparently useless. Quilven snapped. Composure completely abandoned. Jack finished his water, picked up his certification plaque that he had left at the arena edge, and examined it. So, does this mean I need to return the Category 5 certification? Because the plaque is actually really nice. Good craftsmanship. Nobody answered. They were too busy frantically sending messages, requesting emergency sessions, and generally trying to contain a diplomatic situation that had already spiraled beyond containment. I approached Jack, because someone had to ask the obvious question. Did you know this would happen? Did you plan this? He looked at me, genuinely surprised. Plan what? I just wanted to try the arena. Earth has combat sports. Seemed like similar cultural tradition. Was I not supposed to win? Not supposed to win. Like winning was an accidental byproduct of participation rather than the entire point. Like defeating the arena champion was just an unexpected bonus to his cultural exchange visit. Your species, I said carefully, has just terrified the entire Galactic Council. Jack considered this. It seems like an overreaction. I am just one person, and I am not even threatening. The certification says so. He held up his Category 5 plaque as evidence, and I swear the irony was so thick you could build structures with it. Around us, the arena was emptying rapidly. Species representatives hurrying to contact their homeworlds. Officials scrambling to manage the crisis. Betting boards still processing the financial chaos, and in the middle of it all stood Jack Reeves, botanist, Category 5, non-threatening, holding his certification plaque and looking slightly confused about why everyone was so upset. Thorax limped back onto the arena floor, recovered enough to stand but still clearly exhausted. He approached Jack, extended one of his forearms, and spoke with something approaching respect. Welcome to the Galactic Council, human. May your species bring interesting times.
Interesting times.
That was one way to put it. Catastrophically unpredictable was another. Pants-wettingly terrifying was a third option. Jack shook Thorax's hand, smiled, and said thank you. And somewhere, in some bureaucratic office, someone was updating the human species file from Category 5 to something much, much higher. The emergency council session convened 6 hours later. Representatives from 47 member species crammed into the chamber, all demanding answers, all pointing fingers, all very carefully not pointing those fingers at the humans because nobody wanted to provoke them. The vote was unanimous. Humans, reclassified to Category 1. Maximum threat level, restricted travel pending diplomatic protocols, military capabilities assessment required before any further integration, from Category 5 to Category 1 in a single afternoon. That had to be some kind of record for bureaucratic failure. I watched the proceedings from the gallery, sipping my beverage, enjoying the schadenfreude. Quilven had already submitted his resignation. Hilmath was facing an inquiry. The entire assessment department was being restructured. Meanwhile, Jack Reeves was probably back at his quarters reviewing xenobotany research, completely unaware that he had triggered the largest diplomatic crisis in council history. Or maybe he knew. Maybe he had planned it. Maybe humans were exactly that clever, that dangerous, that good at looking harmless while being anything but. Either way, the Galactic Council had learned an expensive lesson. Never, ever judge a species by their lack of claws, especially if that species does not need claws. Because they have something worse. They have endurance, and patience, and the terrifying ability to just keep going. Category 5. Non-threatening. Sure, absolutely. Whatever helps you sleep at night. This is what the Galactic Academy